All right, hello class, thank you so much for joining me. So what we're going to be doing today is we're going to be expanding on our analysis of market power by thinking about strategies that firms can use to increase the amount of profit they can get as a result of having market power. So where we left off last time, right, is we said that when we've got a firm that has a downward sloping demand curve, or I'll say P of Q is downward sloping, we've got Q and P, right? Instead of producing where price equals marginal cost, they're going to produce a lower level of output at a higher price, right, in order to capture some of the consumer surplus, right? So they're going to produce at Q star like this, where this is my marginal revenue, my marginal cost, right? They're going to charge a price like P star. And one of the important things we said comes out of this picture is that if we think about welfare analysis, the firm is going to get a profit equal to this, right? For now, we're forgetting about fixed costs, right? A producer surplus, if you prefer, like this, right? The area above their marginal cost curve, below their price. The consumer gets a consumer surplus, right? It's the area below their willingness to pay and above the price. And then there's this deadweight loss here, right, that nobody gets. So in this circumstance, a monopolist is going to do a lot better than a competitive firm would do, right, than a competitive industry would do that would produce where price equals marginal cost. But the monopolist is leaving a lot of potential value on the table. If we think about the total potential value to the economy or to society of the existence of this market, right, it would be this whole big triangle-ish shape here. Right? The monopolist is getting this piece here, but they're leaving this on the table, right? The deadweight loss that goes to no one, and they're leaving this on the table, right? This benefit that goes to consumers. If they were going to extract the maximum possible value from their market position, they would want to get this whole triangle. So what we're going to be talking about today is essentially the strategies you can use as a firm to get closer to this maximum possible benefit of your market position. Now, there's two things that are going to be really important in determining whether a particular firm is able to do any of this, right, or what they're able to do. The first thing is ability to control resale. So if we're thinking about ways that firms can charge different prices to different people in order to capture some of this producer surplus for themselves or capture some of this deadweight loss to themselves, one of the important determinants of their ability to do that, right, is going to be the ability to avoid having whoever's getting charged the lowest price turn around and resell all of their stuff to the people who are being charged a high price, right? So the existence of eBay, the ability to sell something in the secondary market, is going to reduce firms' ability to charge different prices to different people. The second thing is going to be knowledge about consumers or knowledge about demand. So in order for the firm to make to choose a profit maximizing price and quantity at all, they do need to know quite a lot about their demand curve, right? They essentially need to know both that they can sell a certain amount at a certain price, but also what the slope of their demand curve is right around the area they're selling. If they're going to engage in price discrimination, if they're going to engage in strategies to try to capture more of these consumer surpluses and deadweight losses, they're going to need even more information. In addition to knowing, right, the general shape of their total demand curve, they're also going to want to know who is buying each unit, right, at different points along their demand curve. They're going to want to be able to identify those people, right, identify different types of demanders as they attempt to buy stuff. So what we're going to do with the rest of this lecture is we're going to walk through several different strategies that firms can use to price discriminate, by which I mean charge different prices for different purchases in order to capture a larger amount of the total possible surplus. In some ways, this is a strange thing for us to do relative to the rest of our semester, because we're moving from these very, very big questions, right, about efficiency of economies and all of this sort of stuff, these fairly narrow questions about how a particular business is going to try to maximize its profits. And we're going to do this for a couple of reasons. The first reason is, this stuff is just a kind of economic theory that once you see it and understand it, you see it all around you. You're going to notice lots and lots of circumstances under which firms are using the pricing strategies that we're going to talk about today. And that's pretty interesting. It's also going to be worth doing because one of the big ways that the economy is changing right now is that access to data and analytics is exploding, right? There's much, much more information that each firm has about their consumers than they ever have before. And one of the big areas where the skills that you learn as an econ major are valued in the economy is in this exact sort of analysis, right? Is trying to estimate the shape of demand curves or run experiments with different kinds of pricing strategies. So understanding these pricing strategies well is going to be a great way to allow you to kind of think more concretely about the way that you can use economic analysis. Okay, wonderful. So let's start out by thinking about the best case scenario for a firm with market power. In other words, let's think about the strategy that will allow a firm with market power to capture the maximum possible surplus from their market. So to do that, let's start out by thinking about a firm that can't price discriminate at all, right? That's setting a single price for all of their output. In this case, let's imagine they're setting a price of 10 and selling 40 units of output. So in this situation, right, as we said, the firm has two problems. The first problem is they would love to sell a 41st, 42nd, 43rd, etc. unit of output at prices they could get for those units, right? Let's say at $9, $8, $7, etc., right? They're just unwilling to do that when they would have to offer a discount on all of their existing units, right? So it would be worth it to them to sell an extra unit of output at a price of $9. It's just not worth it to them to lower their price on their first $40 units worth of output, right? This is where the deadweight loss comes from, is an inability to lower price on the units that they're not selling. Their other loss, right, their other inability to capture the full surplus, comes from, in some sense, the opposite problem, which is that $10 is the maximum amount they can charge for the 40th unit of output, but they could have charged more, let's say $17 for their 10th unit of output, right? And they could have charged $20 for their first unit of output. The reason that they're not charging $17 or $12 or $15 is because if they wanted to charge $17 to sell on their first 10 units, they wouldn't be able to sell their next 30 units, right? So the inability to charge different prices has these two sources of loss for them. One is that they can't charge a high enough price to capture the consumer surplus on the first couple units they sell, right, to take advantage of the fact that some people are willing to pay a lot. The other is they're not able to lower the price in order to take advantage of the fact that some people would be willing to pay a little bit, but not as much as the 40th unit, right? Above marginal cost, but not high enough to justify lowering the price. So let's imagine that you didn't have this problem, right? You were no longer stuck in the situation of having to charge a single market price to every, or a single, not a market price, sorry, a single price to every single person, right? Let's imagine instead that you knew exactly who your demander was for each unit of output, you knew exactly how much they were willing to pay, and you could absolutely prohibit resale of items, right? So you no longer had this problem where if you charged a lower price to some people, they would sell back to the original people. You no longer have this problem of not knowing who's willing to pay a lot and who's willing to pay a little bit for your output. So the best example I can think of a firm that might not have these problems is, let's imagine that I'm running a fortune-telling business, right? I read people's palms, I can tell their future, can read deep inside of their thoughts. As a result, I know exactly how much they're willing to pay for palm reading, and I'll know for sure if somebody makes an appointment and someone else shows up, right, who's offering a lower price. So in this case, right, for my palm reading business, when I know exactly who I'm selling to, and I can charge a different price to everyone, how much am I going to charge for my first palm reading? Well, I'm going to charge that person the maximum amount that they're willing to pay, right? I don't have to charge them a lower price in order to get more customers, because the price I set for that person is totally independent of the price I set for the next person who walks in the door, right? So for that first bit of palm reading, I'm going to charge $20. How much do I charge for the next customer, right, for the next palm reading session? The maximum amount that person's willing to pay, right? So my surplus on the first is going to be the difference between marginal cost and $20. Surplus on the second, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So all of these people, who if I couldn't price discriminate, are paying a price below their maximum willingness to pay. Right? All these people who are only paying $10 when they were willing to pay 20 or 15 or 17 are going to pay their full maximum willingness to pay. Right? So I'm going to take away all of the consumer surplus because I'm charging everyone their maximum willingness to pay. How about this deadweight loss? Well, I was willing to charge $9 for a session, right? Or $8 for a session, or even $7 for up to 50 sessions. I just really wasn't willing to lower the price for everyone else. So if I no longer have this restriction, right, that lowering the price for some people forces me to lower the price for everyone, I'll sell a 41st and a 42nd and a 43rd and a 44th unit as well. Right? I'll end up producing 50 units of output, and I'll end up charging a different price for every unit of output, given by the maximum willingness to pay, allowing me to get this entire triangle of social benefit as profit. There's two consequences of this. Right? The first is, of course, that I've completely eliminated consumer surplus. Right? I've accrued all of the benefits to myself. The second, though, is that we're going to end up at an economically efficient level of output. Right? In other words, we're going to produce every unit that is worth more to consumers than the inputs it takes to make it are worth in another form. Right? Instead of, if I was a non-price discriminating monopolist, maybe I'm telling fortune some of the time and driving an Uber the rest of the time. Here I'm only going to start driving Uber once my fortune-telling services are less valuable than my Uber driving services. So if this is so great, right, if perfect price discrimination is the best we could possibly do as a monopolist, then why is it that we don't see every firm with market power engaging in this behavior? Well, essentially it's just because the information demands to do this are incredibly, incredibly high. Right? You need to be able to completely prevent resale. Right? Stop someone who you charge low prices to sell to someone with high prices. But you also need to know not only the shape of your entire demand curve, but also exactly who is demanding each of these units. Right? Remember that the demand curve to a firm is just the horizontal summation of all the individual demands. Right? In order to perfectly price discriminate as a fortune teller, I need to know that, Bob is the person willing to pay $20 for session 1, but Bob is only willing to pay $10 for session 2 and $8 for session 3, right? Whereas, Charlize is willing to pay $17 for session 1, $12 for session 2, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? So this requires massively more information about your consumers than does a normal single price strategy, right? Where you need to know the shape of your demand curve, but you don't need to know the identities of the people demanding your products. Cool. Okay, so if this is the ideal, we're going to spend the rest of the lecture talking about other ways to get closer to this ideal without needing that extensive of information.